Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tom Stewart. I'm with Liz Trotter, and this is Smart Business Moves. We're in for a treat today, folks. We have Don Phin as our guest. Hey, Don, how are you today?
Very good, very good.
Really appreciate you joining us today. I've known Don for a long time. He's a speaker for Vistage, which is a peer group for CEOs, and Don travels around the country. And I'll let him tell his story, but he's a professional. He's a pro. So he's going to be bringing it today, and he's going to be talking about how to show up in a time of crisis. And you're going to like what you hear today, and you're going to like what Don has to say even more here in November, because he's going to be one of the live speakers for the ISSA/ARCSI convention. And Liz, you know all about that. You've been working hard putting that together, right?
Yep. Sure have. And
yep.
Liz.
Yep. Yep, I'm excited, and you're going to be a live speaker, Don. So that's even better.
That's much better than a dead speaker. So I'm glad I'm going to be a live speaker. Okay, I'm looking forward to being live. Live, all the way live. I think there was a song like that.
What were the Bernie movies where he was like the dead uncle that they?
Oh yeah! Oh my God. Yeah, Vacation with Bernie's. No, I can't remember. It was hysterical. Yeah.
Weekend at Bernie's. That was awesome.
Yeah. That's what it was. Good job, Don. Hey, Don, did Tom tell you about the comments tab?
Yes, I have it open.
Okay, good.
Hey, Marlo's there. Hi, y'all. Hi, Marlo.
Hey, Marlo.
Just real quick housekeeping. We're almost to the end of the week, but we are doing on the spot tomorrow. And there's you guys hear that loud motor noise?
Yeah. What is it?
It's a boat.
It's not loud on my end. It's very quiet, but I can hear it.
Okay. I can shut the doors if I have to. Anyway, do you have a hint for who our on the spot guest is going to be tomorrow?
So I want to make it easy at this point in time, y'all. If you haven't gotten it by now, you need to know this is a marketing guy. He has many, many talents, but one of his main talents is he's a marketing guy, and his initials are PF. If you can't get it there, y'all just don't know him. So I'm pretty sure you'll get him.
We should
Leslie
probably
says, hey. All right, Leslie.
Spot him a few other letters, like playing hangman. I guess we're making this too easy.
Because I want them to have their questions ready for tomorrow.
So, Don, I love your story, your history in terms of the life you had before you pursued
my previous lifetime.
Yeah. Back when you had a real job, I guess. You want to just take a few minutes and share your story with our audience?
Sure. So you'll hear the Bronx accent, all right? And I moved out of the Bronx and came to San Diego when I was 20 because I was kind of uninvited to my first two colleges, and so they figured didn't make sense to go back for a third time if you don't know what you want to do. And ended up working on a tuna boat out of San Diego to kind of straighten out. And, you can't party too hard in the middle of the ocean with just a bunch of guys. So it had its intended effect. And I ended up finishing up at San Diego State out here and then going to law school. And I had 2 kids right away when I got off that tuna boat. So I went through college and law school. And part of the story I had, and I talk a lot about our stories, was this Robin Hood story that was sitting in the background of my consciousness about if I'm going to be a real hero, I'm supposed to help the poor and oppressed overthrow the dastardly and the villainous, right? And so I ended up doing that in the employment law arena, which I was very fascinated by. It was just kind of blowing up in the early 80s when I started my practice and actually had some precedential cases that I did, especially in the whistleblower area. So I ended up representing these poor, oppressed, victimized employees against their dastardly, villainous bosses. And whether fortunately or not, I never lost a case I took to trial. I was very smart about what cases to try. That's part of that equation. But at the end of my career, I represented nuclear power plant whistleblowers. So I kept ratcheting up the complexity of my cases over the years. And my life turned into a John Grisham novel at that point, literally putting in over 70 hours a week, trying to fight for the cause, killing the marriage in the process, burning myself out. And they knew that I had a very big set of cases on my hands, and they would not let me take them to trial. So they put me on appeal year after year after year. These cases dragged out 5 years, 6 years. And my finances were getting dragged out 5 years, 6, and my clients were having enough of it. And we finally said, you know what, this is nonsense. And that's pretty much when I quit litigating. Interestingly, the cases I did get to litigate in those last few years, I represented employers who I had beat earlier on in my career, asking me to represent them. So my last 3 verdicts were employer verdicts. Then I quit litigation entirely at 40. I did some turnaround consulting and eventually started a company called HR That Works. So this was at the beginning of the internet just blowing up, the information marketing and all that kind of idea. And so I put together tools for HR executives, and I eventually had 3,500 companies using it. And I built that company as what I would call a lifestyle business. I was very impacted by Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. So from a guy who'd been working 70+ hour work weeks, seeing a book 4-hour work week, I'm like, yeah, right, but I better read this. And so I did, and it allowed me to think in terms of leverage more and using my time better. And so I ended up building that business and working 40 hours a week or less, earning more than I did as a lawyer. And then around 2014, my larger competitor kept bugging me enough, and I was ready to do something else. And I sold to Think HR, which was up in the Bay Area. They have now over 300,000 companies using their program.
Wow.
So the one nice thing about it is I got a friends and family rate for Think HR licenses. So if any of you guys need a Think HR license, just let me know. And so I worked with them for 2 years, got to see how Silicon Valley area based SaaS companies worked, which was fascinating in itself. You know, all the VC money coming in and all the pressure that put on organizations. And I've been out since 2016, spending most of my time now coaching these executives and doing my public speaking. And of course, a lot of that public speaking got wiped off the map. So I will probably have my worst year in 20 years this year. And I've used the time when I've not been out there speaking to generate a bunch of online programs, which I'll be releasing. So that's the long and short of it. I live in Coronado, which is over the bridge from downtown San Diego, which is a pretty nice place. And as I was kidding with them, I don't expect any sympathy, but I've been getting bored in paradise. You know, that's I need some grit, you know, I need some travel. I need to see people, you know, get on planes and hotel rooms.
Yeah, you're probably one of the only people saying that.
Yeah. My wife's like, don't you have someplace to speak? You know,
It's time to go, honey.
One of the challenges is, you know, as I kid around in a workshop, every relationship needs space to survive.
Yeah.
Because I've got my college freshman in the living room. My wife's in the next room. I'm in this room. You know, we need some space from each other even, you know. Both of my sons, the husband and wife are working home with 2 kids at school at home. Where do they get space, you know? So that's a challenge for so many of us right now, you know, just to maintain these relationships in this weird environment.
It's the new abnormal, I guess, but hopefully this will pass in due time. And, you know, I guess we're waiting for some therapeutics, some vaccines. I don't know, the thinking is by maybe this time next year, things might start looking more like they used to. We can hope.
Yep, we can hope.
What do we say just about every show? We just talk about how these are unprecedented times.
Yeah.
And this is where you're going to learn something. You know, one of my favorite quotes is from a guy, Paulo Coelho. He's the New Age author who wrote The Alchemist. And he said that only the mediocre are ever truly comfortable.
Okay.
And I'll put that up in the beginning of the Vistage workshops up on the whiteboard and stuff like that, because we have this inherent desire right out of Maslow's needs to have safety and security and be comfortable, because if we're comfortable, then we're not at risk. But if we're too comfortable, you might as well, check out. I sold my company to put myself into discomfort, because that means I have growth. And if we're just comfortable, we're not growing, right? And most of your audience, and I know it well from ARCSI days, starting off in ISA days, they're mostly all entrepreneurs, right? Going for it. And so they're not interested in that whole fantasy of someday I'm going to be comfortable. Really? Is that what you want? Wouldn't that just be the death of you, Yeah. Yeah, well, how's about a few days of it, all right? Just a few days of it, So,
It's kind of like planning for retirement. And I know that some people look forward to that. And I guess that's fine if you've got other challenges and aspirations. But, I know for myself, I can't ever imagine that. It's like if I need to keep moving, keep working.
Yeah, look, I've known, especially from my Vistas experience, I know a lot of people that are in their 70s and some in their early 80s still running groups and being very vigorous, keeping the mind sharp. As the number one fear as we get older is actually losing our mind, not our physical. The mental failures is a greater concern of people than the physical failures. And I think by staying in touch with work and stuff like that, you keep the brain sharp. If this is what I'm dealing with, is anything like what retirement would be like, I don't want any part of it.
Right.
But what I would like is most of us, when this gets better, I like to take a little more vacations and that kind of stuff, but I don't want to stop contributing.
Yeah, me either. That just sounds like heck on earth, man. No way. I'll pass.
My dad's in the villages in Florida and Orlando there, and I have no desire to adopt that lifestyle,
No.
I can appreciate that a lot of people do. That's not my gig either. It doesn't sound at all appealing or enticing.
Yeah, and it's not as that motive isn't as great in the entrepreneurial community as in the quote employee community, because a lot of those people, they're traditional, they come out of Midwest manufacturing environments, they got these pensions, they're able to retire on them nicely. That's all disappearing. That after the baby boom generation, those pensions don't exist anymore, and all that stuff is gone. It's going to really change that retirement landscape a lot. I'll be curious to see what the villages is like in 20 to 30 years when all those pensions have passed away.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, it's
a good thing we like to keep working. I mean, if that's our plan.
Well, no, it doesn't have to be full time, as long as it's fulfilling, right? That's the whole idea, is to be fulfilled. So
yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Well, tell us what you're going to talk with us about today, Don. I'm excited about I was intrigued by your topic.
Yeah. Well, I have won myself out about speaking about coronavirus laws. I don't want no more coronavirus law webinars. Because of my legal background and the fact I can move quickly, I was able to jump in right away with you folks and some of the other associations because I could help quickly. Now the big law firms, they're a little slower to turn on the dime. They finally have caught up, and I'll let them do the webinars now. I'll go back to what I really want to talk about. And that's how we show up in difficult times. So we've heard of the idea of emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman wrote that book back in 1995. All right. So that's been in the vocabulary ever since then. He actually grabbed some of that work from other professors that came out with information in 1990. He said, "Do you mind if I borrow your stuff?" and he became a bestseller with it. But what their studies have shown is that a person's emotional intelligence, or as they call EQ, emotional quotient, is more important to their leadership success than their IQ. Right? And we've all known some really smart people that can't get out of their own way, right? We've seen that in your industry. I've seen that in my industry, and it's omnipresent. And so I realized that this was something that directly related to the work that I was doing in the workforce, because I saw a lot of nonsense going on in the workplace, right? And I'm sure both of you have experienced that. And one of my favorite questions I ask people is, have you ever fantasized about going to work and having no employees to deal with that day? Yeah. I get that fantasy, right? Because we don't want to deal with all the drama. The thing that drives business owners nuts the most is that which they can't control. They're all basically control freaks. If you're an entrepreneur, you're pretty much going to be a control freak. You don't want anybody else telling you what to do in your life. That's why you work for yourself. You might have made more money working for somebody else, but the heck with that. At least I'm my own man, I'm my own woman. And we tend to be kind of micromanagers and control freaks. And that's a real challenge for us, because control is dead. As a workplace approach, trying to control other people is pretty much dead today. The catch-22 is the employee you can control. You don't want working for you.
Right.
I always kid around. I said, do what I tell you to do. Don't think for yourself. And you do that, and I'll take care of you.
No.
So do it. I tell you to do, and I'll take care of you. And I'm like, what does that sound like? First of all, it sounds like the 30s and the 40s and the 50s in the workplace, and it sounds like a parent game. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't want any of my employees thinking I'm their daddy. I am not your daddy, okay? And so I don't want to get in this situation where I'm trying to be so controlling, because that's very exhausting. And the people who allow themselves to be controlled, what does that say about them? So I'm really not interested in that type of person being my employee. I don't want anybody thinking I'm there to save them. Okay, because that's not my job to save other adults.
Yeah.
So when we've been going through all of this, this is an unprecedented experience for the vast majority of people. I remember 2008, 2009 very well. That's when I was doing maybe 80 Vistage workshops a year, and just seeing all the panic going on there. But this is kind of a different thing. That was a quick off the cliff, and it had this very immediate impact. This is kind of this wavy thing going on. We don't know when that wave oscillation is going to stop or where it's going to end up, right? And so it's a little bit unprecedented. It's not a typical financial challenge that we had in the .com failure or 2008, 2009. We're old enough to remember those things. There's a lot of people in the workplace today, the millennials, have not had to experience that. Yeah. They have not, that when they were in school in 2008, 2009, a lot of them. That was their parents' problem, not their problem. So all of a sudden, this is very unprecedented for half the workforce, at least. All right, that's dealing with it today. So I sat back and I said, all right, knowing what I do talk about, knowing what I know, how do I help myself? How do I help other people? And one thing I like to have is frames to think through. Right, because this can get very noisy and very complex, and as Einstein talked about the importance of finding simplicity in things, right? And so I distilled down my framework for dealing with this to 3 words. And as Tom and I were kidding around, this is my high-tech presentation today. Okay, this is where we're going.
Yeah, nice.
Okay.
And I'll be a little bit. There you go. I'll be a little bit more hipper than this in the ISA presentation. Okay. So the first word is responsibility. And so that takes care of the logic of the situation. So what's the overriding word for the logic of the situation? And to me, that's responsibility. Right? And so I have to ask myself as an employer, am I doing what I'm required to do to be responsible? So now part of that responsibility is all the compliance stuff that's come out and will continue to be generated. Fortunately, the Department of Labor has done a pretty good job on their frequently asked questions page about trying to answer every possible question out there. And understanding the business of my responsibility to employees versus my responsibility for employees. Big distinction. Tom probably remembers that. I talking about it years ago.
Yes.
So you are only responsible for your employees where the law says you are. So right now the law says you've got to create a safe workplace. Well, that's a responsibility to put people in a safe workplace, right? You're required to pay their wages and pay their overtime. And that's a challenge now with remote workers and how we track time tracking. So all those responsibilities for them are legally mandated. All the other places, you're only responsible to those employees. They're adults. I'm not responsible for you. You're an adult. All right. You're responsible for you. And when I do the workshops and I ask the CEO, just like I would ask both you, what do either one of you, when I say your responsibility to your employees, what does it mean to you to be responsible to your employees? Either one of you.
So to me, it means that I'm providing what I say I'm going to provide. So I'm providing work, I'm providing opportunity, that they can come and take advantage of what I have to offer or not. But this is what I'm responsible.
Yeah, you're setting the stage. You're creating the opportunity for them to be successful, for them to earn a wage and, have a successful life, whatever, their values are. But you're not responsible for making sure that, they behave like, an adult and pay their bills and have money in the bank and do all the other things that a lot of times employees would like to put that monkey on your back, but that's not our role. We create the opportunity and, try to coach them to make smart decisions, but ultimately they're responsible for the choices that they make.
Yep. And so one of the things that I noticed, and we've got to watch this still happening, but I noticed especially in March when this all kicked in, because we didn't think it was going to last this long, right? Everybody's, hey, 6 weeks later, we'll be out of this, right? No problem. And people were making promises to employees. And I'm like, no. You don't know where this thing is going. You can't tell anybody, don't worry, we'll take care of your wages. A lot of people said, we're going to take care of your wages. I'm like, no. And then they had to back off of their overcommitment. And that was, in a sense, that yo-yoing with the employees was an irresponsible act by some of those, because what they were doing, they were just self-sacrificing. They're taking money out of their pocket to help other people. And a lot of those other people go, I'd rather go on unemployment. I'll get even more.
Mm-hmm.
A challenge your whole industry had, especially out here in California with all some of the benefits, or New York and those states, it's cheaper to stay home. Rather, they made off better staying home.
Where wasn't it? I don't know a state where it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the wages in the house cleaning industry, just by market forces or such, that I guess the extra $600 a week the federal government is throwing in on top of state unemployment, it was always a better financial outcome to be on unemployment.
Yeah. So that's one of the, so the first place we start, and I don't want to spend a lot more time with this, is on the responsibility. My ultimate line about what it means to be responsible to an employee is to put them in a position where they're capable of success.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what you ever wanted from a boss you had?
Yeah.
Just let me show my stuff. I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to learn and stuff. Let me show that, So can you put me in a position where I'm capable of doing my best? That means you have to know people's strengths. You have to understand those types of things when you hire them. You have to do good interviewing. You have to do some testing so that you don't put around peg into a square hole, hoping that they'll succeed. All right. So that's the kind of responsibility umbrella. And you'll see in my training, I use a lot of 3 words all the time. So we got responsibility, grace, and creativity. And when you're not one of those three, you open up the door to guilt, regret, and remorse. Okay. So when I know that I've been less than 100% responsible, then I can feel the guilt in a situation, whether it's to my family, to myself, to somebody else. But if you know you've been 100% responsible, then you can let go because you know stuff happens. But I don't have to beat myself up about it. I've done everything I could do to be responsible. And that's one of the beauties of knowing that you're being self-responsible is your ability to let go. You don't have this lingering thing going, man, am I going to be guilted out because I haven't done anything? Am I going to regret this move? Well, if you play above the line and stay responsible, then you'll avoid those things. So that's responsibility. The next word was grace. If you remember, so grace being the second word here. And I was talking, again, from the emotional standpoint, how we show up, the right side of the brain, the soft stuff, however you want to language that. The word, the highest thought word I could come up with was grace. I just really sat in it, settled into it, and said, okay, what word works here? And grace does. Because isn't that how you want to show up? Gracefully. I can't think of talking about somebody and saying, that person's so graceful. What better thing could you say about somebody, And we've heard that phrase, grace under fire. All right, so we, in high-pressured situations, how do we show up gracefully? And that's where most of the conversation I have goes about how we do that. So both of you know that a lot of my conversation first started around the drama triangle of the victim, the villain, and the hero. And we have heard that forever. That's been around forever. We're familiar with it just from our own upbringing and domestication. We know about victims, villains, and heroes since we're little kids. Right? But what people a lot of times don't understand is the distinction between being a true victim, true villain, or true hero, and the mask that we put on, the drama mask that you're so familiar from Greek tragedies. We distinguish between somebody being a victim and having a victim mentality. All right? Victim mentality is how you show up. If you get hit by a Mack truck, you're a victim. How you deal with the fact is the mentality. And so we're familiar with that distinction. A lot of us haven't taken that thought out further to realize that there's also the villain mentality versus a true villain, and it's the hero mentality versus the true hero. Okay? Nice. So that's where we start. And in the setting of the workplace, we've been domesticated into stories before we ever had a job. We had a story about work before we ever got to work. Okay. It came from the dinner table. It came from movies. It came from all these other places. So before we were 18 and had our first real jobs, I'm not talking about some, but real jobs, post-school real jobs. Up to then, it was all a story about the workplace. And now, all of a sudden, in that story, in the domestication of the story about work, the employee has always been cast in the victim role throughout all stories. Okay. Any movie, any dinner conversation you heard about your parents talking about their experience, or somebody else talking about their experience. So it was all about how work sucked. My boss is terrible. I don't get paid enough. They treat me like, what, and all this type of stuff. That's what you didn't grow up in wonderful work stories. Who grew up in those,
Unless your family was maybe an entrepreneur, right?
Right. Well, so, and they had control over their lives, and then they'll point fingers at the government and to everybody else, right?
Right. They were more villainous.
So have to start off by understanding the default position of the employee as victim. So their unconscious mind, which their learning does 90% of the processing in our body is the unconscious brain, wants you to be safe and secure. And so they have all these stories, built up to say, okay, your spidey senses, I want you to watch to see where you're being victimized. The spidey senses aren't there to see it. I want you to watch where you're being treated like a hero. That's not what we're watching, because we're still concerned about safety and security. Maslow 101, right? That's what the employee is filtering for, to see if they're being manipulated, abused, if they're somehow at risk. And it's not a frontal lobe thought. They're not sitting there all day, am I at risk, am I at risk, am I at risk? The unconscious is having that conversation for them. And what happens scientifically is the unconscious thinks, hey, this is getting a little heavy. Yo, frontal brain, conscious brain, you better look into this. But otherwise, it's processing all through it. Just like when we're taking a walk, we're not telling ourselves, pick up the knee. But all of a sudden, you see a big rock you got to step over. The unconscious says, hey, better think about stepping over that rock, okay? So that's the default role of the employee. Now, I've been teaching this in sales for a number of years, too. In the story about sales, the default role of the buyer is that of a victim. Buyer beware, caveat emptor, ancient Latin. So the spidey senses of the buyer is looking to see where they're going to be manipulated, just like the employee. Right?
Yep.
So that's what they're filtering for. That's what they're filtering for. Now,
that's what they're finding.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, you get what you look for, right?
Yeah.
So then, in every story about the workplace throughout the millennia, what role has the boss been cast in?
The villain.
Boss is villain. And I challenge people, tell me one story ever otherwise. I've heard 3 stories in presenting this over 600 times. I've heard Schindler's List, about the guy who's an industrialist, took over the concentration camp, and one day was in charge of killing people, the other day trying to be nice to them. So it's a juxtaposition story. The other one I hear is a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart versus the old man banker. Juxtaposition story. And the other one is Scrooge, the previous Scrooge and post-revelation Scrooge. So anytime a boss is not cast in a villain role, it's in a juxtaposition story. So I asked the executives, is the villain caring or uncaring?
Uncaring.
So what are the spidey senses of these employees looking for to see where you don't care about them? Because that puts them at risk. Right? There's still the safety and security thing. So that's what the spidey sense is there to make sure that you're safe and secure. Okay. One of the books that really hit home for me was called Leadership and Self-Deception.
Oh, all hail, Don, my favorite book.
Okay, very good. So Tom knows I've been a voracious reader. I've been probably reading a book a week for 30 years. All right. And I learned how to read fast and all of that. And it's one of the most impactful books I've read. Just because of the very simple theme of it. You don't have to read the book. The bottom line is that our self-talk is that I'm a caring person. I can't believe there's anybody that out there, unless they're psychologically deranged, that doesn't have the self-talk that I'm a caring person. And what the book says, the deception, is that we show people that we care about them. And what they remind you in that book is your self-talk doesn't matter. Only thing people experience is what can work off of what they experience with you. So if you don't show people that you care, why should they assume you do? Okay.
If you don't be caring.
Yeah. So now I asked the group, this is what I miss about in-person stuff, but I asked the group, somebody give me an example of the last time you showed one of your employees that you cared about them. And the first thing that happens is dead silence.
Oh.
Go ahead. But generally, it's dead silence. Now tell me, give me an example of how you showed somebody you cared about them.
Me?
Yeah, I thought you were going to try to do that.
Yeah. So the last time was probably this morning when I had a one-on-one with somebody. kind of ad hoc. I knew he was kind of having a rough day, and so I pulled him into my office and just had a quick one-on-one with him.
Good. Tom, you got a quick story?
I would have to give it a little bit of thought, actually.
Yeah. Look, what happens is, of course, I care about them. I give them a job. I keep them in a safe environment. I'm trying to do the best to market our services so we have more work, all that type of stuff. And it's the same thing at home. I work hard. We have a nice house. We're going on good vacations, all this kind of good stuff.
That has no emotional connection. That doesn't register. That doesn't count. That's not the type of caring that moves the needle.
Right. So when I asked the executives to give me an example, almost everybody gives an example of a calamity of some kind. Their kid got in an accident, their spouse got cancer, this happened with their mom. And I said, do you need a calamity to show people you care about them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And that I was like, it was a wake-up call for me. And I played this little game, putting rubber bands on my wrist to remind me about things. And I played the game of showing one person a day for 30 straight days that I cared about them. And it changed things for me. It gave me an awareness that I didn't have. Now it's so easy to find ways to show people you care about them. I look forward to it. It's so fun. It's actually, it's gratifying stuff, One of my clients is an HR executive, high in HR, and they manage 5 hotels. And she put together a 30-day calendar with an idea of how on each day you can show somebody you care about them. I thought that was the most awesome thing she did. She even said on the weekends how you can show your family you care about them.
All right, so I'm going to show you.
That was pretty amazing.
You'll like this, Don. You see these 5 little paper clips?
Yes.
They're all different colors.
Uh-huh.
So these colors are connected to our core values in our company. So all the people in our office have these little paper clips, and they have to move them, all of them, from their one pocket to the other pocket, left pocket to the right pocket. They're supposed to do it every day. And I will check periodically, show me your pockets, show me your paper clips, to see if they've been moved and make sure that they have them. So you're supposed to show somebody your care about them around these paper clips. So it's the same idea, right? Same idea.
Yeah. We still want to build good habits. I'm 64. I don't intend to stop building better habits,
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, if we don't show people we care about them, we will be villainized. That's the point. Okay? Your self-talk doesn't matter. It's only what you show people that matters. All right. Now, the third role, and by the way, going back to sales again, in the story about sales, of course, what role has a salesperson cast in throughout the millennia? Now, the number one way to show anybody you care about them is to listen to them. Number one way. Yeah. And we're horrible listeners. Horrible listeners. We can't even listen to ourselves very long nowadays. Mm-hmm. You think the conversations are short on the outside. We don't even give ourselves the luxury to think through things internally. When I do the Vistage workshops, I break out the CEOs to face each other in a chair, and one CEO is going to speak for 5 minutes to the other CEO about where they want to take their company. Okay? The other CEO is forced to just listen and sit there like a statue or a Buddhist monk. You can at least still breathe, okay? So you're not allowed to do any hand gestures, no nodding of the heads, no asking questions, nothing for 5 straight minutes. It's a purposely designed exercise. First person goes, interestingly, and we are talking about their businesses, some people run out of what to say before 5 minutes, and we're talking about a place that they're going to spend 50, 60 hours a week at. Then they run out of what to say about it in less than 5 minutes. Mary Kay famously said most people plan their vacations better than their careers. That's a fact. I can ask that same person, where are you going on the next vacation, assuming pre-coronavirus? They'll tell me the itinerary day for day. They got it mapped out. They're going to go to this place. They literally will spend more time planning their vacation than their career. That's a fact, okay? And especially with, entrepreneurs will be a little bit better at planning, but even then sometimes run by the seat of their pants, as they say. Odds are none of your employees have planned for their careers at all. None of them. So the whole idea of career planning, how do you move forward in your career? What's the next opportunity? Career ladders, those types of things are very important for the rank and file. So the last role that we're all trying to play is this kind of hero role. I don't know anybody who, given the choice of the three, doesn't want to play that role. Now, I sometimes like playing the villain role. It's fun. That's what games are for. That's what poker's for. That's what you can manipulate and cheat and lie and all sorts of stuff. You're not going to hurt anybody. It's just a game, all right? So if you want to play those roles, then play a game. If you want to play the victim role, then watch some sappy movie and cry your brains out and get it over with, okay? So most of us want to play the hero role. And I certainly did. And that 70 hours a week and killing my marriage was all part of what I thought the hero role was supposed to be. And then I read Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Now, Joseph Campbell was the expert on mythology. Actually, his conversations with Lucas and Spielberg helped develop the storylines in Star Wars. Okay. And in The Hero with 1,000 Faces, Campbell talks about the mythology of the hero throughout time. And the mythology of the hero is always to be self-sacrificial. All heroes throughout history die by the sword. And you're not in mythology a hero if you haven't self-sacrificed. Because again, a lot of that mythology was built to help people want to self-sacrifice, right? You want a guy to go to war for you, you got to tell him a hero story, self-sacrifice. So the self-sacrifice, at the end of the book, he says that's just mythology. The reality is you don't have to self-sacrifice to be a hero. That's just a story. And as Dr. Phil would say, how's that story working for you? Didn't work so well for me. And I'm like, whoa, you mean you don't have to self-sacrifice to be a hero? How come nobody ever told me that? I never heard that. I was 40. I had never heard that in my life. I heard just the opposite. And that we're supposed to triumph of the hero journey. You're going to have this big mountain of trouble that you've got to overcome so somehow you can redeem yourself afterwards. That would invite you to find some trouble to overcome. So the whole idea that the hero journey has to be self-sacrificial, it has to be hard, you have to triumph over things, it's just storyland. What if it doesn't have to be hard? What if it doesn't have to be hard? That thought blew me away, that wait a minute, it doesn't have to be hard? And that's a fact. So I realized this when I went to law school. I had started 2 years later than most of my classmates because of my life's journeys. I already started with 2 kids. I'd been working. I'd had challenges way before law school. So law school is not the hardest thing on my plate, right? And everybody else had the story, law school is going to be really hard. Med school is going to be really hard. Graduate school is going to be really hard. Starting this business is going to be really hard. I had the story that I know how to listen to people. I can spit back what they've told me. I can pass a test. How hard can that be? You want to see some hard shit? I'll show you some hard stuff. You want to see some hard stuff? Just follow those people around and do the work for you guys every day, day after day after day after day. That's a lot harder than going to law school to me. Okay? Nice cushy environment, learning from smart people, just spitting it back. So I chose to have a good time going to law school, and I did. We got the same grades, got the same degree. They tortured themselves for 3 years, and I had fun for 3 years. So the reality is, even in building our businesses, we have to do things. ISA and Oxy are around to help share best practices. You just have to do the best practices. You don't need a story on top of it that it's going to be hard or it's going to be easy. I mean, you don't need a story on top of it's going to be hard. If you're going to have a story on top of it, because you need a story somehow, then have a story. I got this. This is easy. I can, no problem. Do it in my sleep. All right. you still have to do the same doing. You know, if you're trying to be a great baseball player, you're still going to have to take 100 swings in the cage. You're going to have to shoot 1,000 free throws. You saw one guy says, I love doing this. The other guy says, I hate doing this. You still got to do it. You know, why put the stress on yourself, the unnecessary added stress that this is going to be hard? Okay. Even going through this challenge right now, why do we have to add the conversation to it? This is going to be really difficult. No, I have to just do responsible, graceful, and creative things, and I'll get through this. Okay.
It's like life's 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. It's a choice.
That's right. That's right. So now, how do we get ourselves, given the time here, just 3 words. I get into a little bit more stuff because we had a lot of upfront chatter in the presentation. But let's talk about getting out of our own victimology and helping other people get out of victimology, because anybody who tells me that they don't feel like a victim right now, I'm calling bullshit on it. Really? You're seeing 200,000 people die and you're so disconnected that doesn't cause any impact to you? My wife's brother passed away from COVID. Horrible. Way too soon, the guy, great guy, patriarch of the family. And he got wiped out. Former athlete, the whole 9 yards. Is like, whoa, and the dude is only a year older than me, So that brings it home. A lot of us don't appreciate this because it hasn't hit us personally, like that.
Sorry to hear that, Don.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, 3 words. 3 words to get through all of that, right? And these words are so helpful. So let me write them down so my Bronx accent doesn't get in the way of them. Okay? Coax, encourage, and inspire. So the first word, coax, we're not going to get out of our victimology in any kind of leap. You don't leap out of victimology. You get out of it one step at a time. All right? So the languaging around it, you think, watching my grandkids, I get to see how we most naturally learn. We experiment one little experiment at a time, just one step at a time with all of that. So we're going to get through this one step at a time. And the question that I ask and the line that I use, which is very practiced line, I teach it to a lot of salespeople too. Let's try this, whatever that is. Let's try this as a first safe step and see how it feels. Now, you can talk to somebody about your entire cleaning program, all the things that you can do, and put that person on overwhelm having to make a big decision. Or you can say, look, that's where this can end up, but why don't we just try this? Why don't you just let me clean one office one time? Let's just try that as a first safe step and see how that feels to you. So I want to come at this person with the first safest, minimalist step possible for them to say yes to. When I did that, my consulting work did a turnaround, because at first I was very humble. Then I got all full of myself. I came in and said, you ought to do this. You need to do this. I'm the expert, all this stuff, and kind of overwhelmed those people. And I ended up getting people wanting me to save them as clients. And that's just exhausting. So then I stepped back and I said, you know what? This is what I've done for other people. This is what we can do. But I tell you what, why don't we try this as a first safe step, and we'll see how that feels. And nobody said no. As I kid around, I wish I had known that line when I was dating, okay? So let's try this as a first safe step and see how it feels. I don't, let's say, see if it works. I am giving them an emotional out, right? So that's how we coax people. One safe, all right, so I ask myself as I'm going through this, what's my next safe step? What's my next safe step? What's my next safe step? So I'm not overburdening myself, right? So much of us have this fear about the future that we bring into our present and creating anxiety. And there's absolutely no power in doing that. All the power is in the present. Stay present. What's my next safe step? What's my next safe step? So that's coaxing. Pat on a baby butt. The second word here is to encourage people. And I certainly knew the dictionary definition of encouragement, just like you folks do. And then I met Gary, and he changed my whole notion of what encouragement is. Gary, very successful insurance broker out here in San Diego, multimillionaire, outsells the rest of his team 4-1, and they're successful. I said, Gary, what makes you so different? I figured he had some technique, some strategy, some magic sauce or something that we'd all missed. And he goes, we've all been through the same training. I can't think of anything unique. I said, all right, let's do this. Let's he had 8 salespeople. Let's go to your conference room. Let me try to deconstruct what makes you different. Let me ask some questions and see what comes out of it. He goes, sure. So I get me and him at the head of each table, 4 people on each side. And I started by asking the question, what's the most important thing you do every day? And you can even think how you would answer that, either one of you. And I went around and I got a good, responsible, logical approach around the table. Make the plan, work the plan, understand the prospect's needs, try to satisfy their need. Look, that is good blocking and tackling, responsible thinking. And if you execute on it, you'll have 6-figure sales success, like all of them did. Then I get to Gary. What do you think his answer was? I go, Gary.
Something to do with encourage?
Yeah. So what's the most important thing that you do every day? And he looks at me and he goes, I make people feel good about themselves. Now, that was not the answer I expected. My response, and I immediately got it. It was one of those things like, whoa, it was the double whoa, it's like, I didn't expect that. And holy shit, I get it, Isn't it true that the person who's made you feel good about yourself, you will do anything for?
Oh, yeah.
Those people might exist on one hand in your lifetime. You are blessed if you got them on 2 hands in your lifetime. I'm not kidding.
Mm-hmm.
So much of our parents were fear-based. It wasn't, they're trying to control us from hurting ourselves, etc. So that person who might have made us feel good about ourselves might have been an uncle or a coach or a teacher or somebody like that wasn't so invested in our survival. So they're liberated from that. So making people feel good about themselves is so unique. It is truly so unique. So most people try to sell into pain. Pain pills sell for more than vitamins. I'm like, Gary, well, what about this pain? He goes, don't you think there's enough pain out there, Don? I'm like, hey, man, I agree. I'm not out to see how much I can put somebody in pain so they can then be their hero and save them in that nonsense, right? I said, okay, Gary. I get it. What's your secret to making people feel good about themselves? And again, his answer is simple and profound. He goes, it's easy. You find the good in them. Type A New York lawyer, risk manager, auditor, investigator. I get paid to find where problems are. I can find problems. I can spot problems. And my landscape was, this is a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem. I'm very good at finding problems, right? And what was I doing to myself, to my loved ones, to my work environment? I was really busy finding out what was wrong with everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that was a smack upside the head and said, okay, from now on, I'm going to find the good in things, including myself and other people and circumstances. So one way I've been getting through this is to try to find the good in it. I've actually had longer conversations with my wife and son than I've had in many years. I've actually been able to catch up with some old friends and kind of reinvent myself and do some of the learning I've been wanting to do, but never had the time to do, that type of thing. So even in the most difficult of circumstances, you can find the good in it. Okay? So that's encouragement. By the way, I asked Gary, how do you prep for meetings? Everybody else is like, oh, I go on the internet, I look at this stuff. I go, all right, what's your answer? And he goes, I focus on liking them before I meet them. So now, before I don't have to hear these things twice before I go into meetings. I literally will focus on liking this person before I meet them. Now, what kind of vibe do you think that brings in?
Great vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. We communicate through vibration just like animals do. We really do. The antelope and the cheetah don't have conversations. They just feel the vibe, and so do we, right? So the third word here is to inspire people, which comes from the Latin spiritus, which means breath or life. It's very hard to have one without the other, right? And I'm saying, so leaders have inspired people throughout the millennia with stories. You don't inspire people with facts. Facts tell, stories sell, right? Yeah. So we inspire people with stories, and it's always been the story of some kind of glorious future brought into the present. All right? Some glorious future brought into the present. That's how we inspire people. It might be horrible now, but this is what it's going. This is where we're moving towards. Right? And given all that reading landscape, one book just jumped out to me, and it's Nassim Taleb's Anti-Fragile. So Nassim Taleb wrote the book Black Swan after 9/11, very famous for it in the risk management and investment field. A black swan event is an unknowable unknown. How did anybody know people were going to fly planes into a building? All right. Interestingly, he said the coronavirus was not a black swan event because we're very well aware of these viruses. It was a white swan event that we mishandled. Okay. Now, it wasn't a black swan. It wasn't unknowable. Everybody knew about this stuff. So then along came the 2008, 2009 crash, and because of how he dealt with risk, he made a killing in the markets. And so everybody started paying even more attention to him, went back to that book. Then he wrote the book Anti-Fragile, and by the way, in March, his hedge fund had a 400% return on investment. Okay?
Yeah.
So the metaphor of anti-fragile, there's a lot of people don't have savings. They don't have good health. They're very fragile in this environment. That's why we have this enormous government safety net, because you really don't want people starving and out on the street, right? You hear a lot of languaging today about resilience and resistance. The resilience is that idea of the bamboo. You can blow it down and it'll come right back up. So if you've got the 6 month savings the financial planners tell you to have, odds are you're going to get through this thing without losing the roof over your head or food in your mouth. Now, look, I know people making $300 grand a year, live paycheck to paycheck, are really panicked right now. Really panicked right now because they don't have the work and they don't have the savings to match their lifestyle. All right, so they're kind of panic mode. Right? So when you're resilient or resistant, you can take the hit and come back. Now you might have to work a little bit longer, save a little bit longer, but you'll be all right. When you're anti-fragile, you grow from disorder. You grow from chaos. You evolve like nature does. Nature is anti-fragile. So I love the metaphor being anti-fragile. What do I have to do to be stronger coming out of all of this? What can I do today to be stronger coming? That's anti-fragility. And the greatest part of anti-fragility is creativity. That's a big part of being anti-fragile. We have to be inclusive to the ideas of everybody, not my way or the highway. We have to realize that these are unprecedented times. So I love the metaphor, and a lot of my clients have the book cover up around their office. The anti-fragile, I can't think of a better metaphor to inspire people with. What would that be?
You've shared with us several books that you certainly have shaped your thinking in our discussion today. I'll drop links to these from Amazon if anybody wants to check these out. Anti-Fragile, the Joseph Campbell book. want to make it easy for people. The leadership and self-deception is, did I get that right? Or was that?
Yep, that's it. That's it.
Tom, you have had this training from me, the getting out of the box training. This is the Be Better framework. That's where that's from.
Oh, really? Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Don, we're at the top of the hour. We've got just another minute or so. Are there any closing thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, just, you know, this framework, it really is having, if there is something more that I could really think through and sit in and use as a framework for people, this is simple. It covers all the bases. It covers the logical, covers the emotional, and it covers the new, you know, the creative. And I can't think of a better metaphor for that. And coax, encourage, and inspire is how we help ourselves and other people become true heroes. You know, and so that's why I love that, you know, trying to be, we'll talk a little bit about emotional energy and bring a different conversation into the presentation that you've heard a little bit about before, about our emotions around it. So for example, a victim has very low emotional energy. A villain has a very strong, and so does hero have strong emotional energy. So how we handle our energy is something I'll also be bringing into the conversation next month.
So, which is a good segue to the convention, the virtual convention. If you haven't registered for that, I'll make it easy for you.
Yeah. And by the way, anybody who's on, if you want to shoot me an email just to Don@DonPhin.com, I'll send you a PDF of my 40/40 solution book there. Okay. If you buy it on Amazon, but if you click on the 40/40 solution right there on the top, on the banner, Tom. Up, right, where it says 40/40 solution. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will send you that book. You can buy it, the hardcover, on Amazon for $25. But if you want a PDF of it, I will send you a PDF of it. Just shoot me an email.
Thank you, Don.
Yes.
Can I send you a text? I already have your text up.
Please.
All right.
Just I have your email. Don't worry about it.
All right. Will you remember?
Yeah.
All right. I don't want to forget.
Thank you, Don. This is kind of a preview of what you're going to be getting and a whole lot more. We've got a lot of speakers for the convention. November 16th through 19th. It's going to be virtual. It's going to be really easy. You're not going to have to get on an airplane or travel or do anything. You'll be able to do it from the comfort of your own home.
Just have a lot of popcorn. That's all.
Easy, cheap, and safe.
Yes. Hey,
3 words, right?
Love both of you guys. So glad you brought me on today. I'm looking forward to catching up with everybody else at the convention. I saw the lineup. You've got some great speakers coming on. So I'm glad to be part of that team.
Thank you, Don. We'll see you in November, and we'll be back here tomorrow at 5 o'clock Eastern. Take care. See you.